Hello, everyone. My name is Abigail Barbanel, and I've been a psychotherapist for 26 years. Welcome to another episode in my series, Taking the Mystery Out of Therapy. And today's topic is stress. I will discuss what stress is and what it isn't, and also what to do about it. Stress is something that everybody recognizes. They know when they feel stress, and everybody thinks also they know what the word means because when somebody says, I'm stressed, everybody can relate to that experience of not coping, of feeling like you're at the end of something and you just can't manage anything. It's a sense of tension, it's an incredibly uncomfortable feeling, and there's a large number of people who are on stress leave at any given point in time. I read somewhere, I forget which organization, but about almost half the people working there are actually currently on stress leave. It happens to everybody, and I'd like to clarify what stress is and what it isn't. So, everybody knows what stress feels like, but they don't necessarily know exactly what it is. And let me explain. So, having a lot to do, for example, having a lot to do and not having enough time to do it in doesn't mean stress. It's just a fact. I have a lot of things to do, and I estimate that I don't have a lot of time to do them in. So that is just a fact of what it is. Whether I'm going to get stressed by it or not, that's a completely different matter. And that is because stress is actually the experience of feeling under threat. There is something in the situation that we experience as stressful that actually feels to our limbic system as life threatening. And that's a very important distinction. People can be in actual life threatening situations, or they might feel that they're in life threatening situations. Either way, they will experience it as threat. Stress is very real. It's not that people imagine it, but it's really important to understand how to relate to it or what it means. When somebody tells me, for example, that they're very, very stressed because at work, for example, because they've got some big piece of work to do by a certain amount of time, and they're really, really stressed by it, and because they don't think that they're going to be able to finish it on time, I ask them, okay, well, that's what's happening. So what makes you feel stressed? And they look at me funny because it's like I'm supposed to understand that that situation automatically induces stress. But then what I do is I actually take them through a process of thinking about it that clarifies a great deal about what it is that makes them stressed in that situation. So I tell them, okay, so what have you got to do? And so, well, I've got this really, really big report at work to do that my manager is expecting by a certain deadline. And because of other commitments that I have and family situations, I just don't have enough time to do it in. So, okay, so where's the threat in that? And they look at me funny again and they say, oh, well, my boss will be really upset with me if I don't submit it on time. And then I go on and I say, okay, and what's the threat in that? So the boss is not going to be happy with you because they want the report by a particular date. Where's the threat in that? And they say, well, um, I could lose my job. And if the boss is not happy with me, I could lose the job. And then I say, and then what? What's going to happen then? What is the threat then? And then they say, well, I won't be able to pay the mortgage. And then what will happen? Well, I could lose my home. And they all, everybody looks at me like I'm a bit of an idiot when I ask these questions, but bear with me. So I could lose my home if I can't pay the mortgage. And then what will happen? Well, then I'll be, I don't know, I won't have anywhere to live. I'll just be out drifting in the streets. I'll be walking around aimless. I will have no place to be. And and then I ask them if that is familiar to them, that the feeling that comes up with this kind of thought, is it familiar to them? And then they just look at me and they say, yes, when I was a child, My father used to always get into these kind of financial adventures. He always had this dream that he was going to start this company and do this and do that. And it would often fall flat, and we would have to move and all the time. And my parents were always worried about money. And I, from a very young age, we kept moving around, and we lived in really, really horrible places. And sometimes we had to live in a caravan because we couldn't, my parents couldn't pay the bills. And I would have to move from one school to another. And it was absolutely horrible. And then I just look at them and I say, so you've actually experienced that? And the whole point about this kind of line of, if you like, of inquiry or observation or exploration is to recognize that if somebody feels stressed about something, if somebody is afraid of something and feels that there is a threat to their existence, it's 9 times out of 10, it's because they've already experienced something like that. Now, fast forward to the present, the fear, which is unintegrated, which is from the past, the person kind of moved on from it. They thought they moved on from it. It suddenly pings itself, if you like, to the current experience of not having enough time to finish a report by a particular amount of time, by a particular deadline. And that fear is actually old. What is awakened now, the sense of stress now, is actually an indication that there is actually some unfinished business from the past that is not integrated, that the person hasn't really moved on from it, despite the fact that they think that they did. So, stress in the present, a lot of the time, it's because there is something in the present situation that really awakens something old from the past. Everybody who lives with childhood trauma is going to experience stress at some point in time about something that may not be going so well in the present. And sometimes, if somebody has trauma, sometimes it can be something very small, or if they thought about it logically, very manageable. But if you remember from my previous podcast, when the limbic brain spirals into existential fear, it can shut down the prefrontal cortex so people can no longer think clearly about their situation. If the person could think clearly about their situation, about the report, for example, and they had nothing from the past that's awakened, they could go to the boss and have a chat and discuss what's going on. And I'm sure that most of the time, they'd probably be able to sort it out. But people panic. Stress is about being in a state of existential threat. So stress equals threat. It's not just I have a lot to do and not enough time to do it in. So what do we do about stress? Most of the advice given to people really gets on my nerves because most of the advice that is out there universally is about stress management. And this follows the same problematic attitude that we have to mental health in general, which is about symptom management. If somebody feels stressed, as in under threat, the most important thing is to listen to what the threat is telling them. If a person feels, well, what is it that's threatening to me about the situation, they will start getting some information, because if you remember, all our internal emotional experiences are trying to tell us something about our circumstances in the present, about our circumstances in the past, usually a bit of both. Now, people who are in the present time in threatening situations. For example, people who are experiencing domestic abuse, or children or teenagers who are living in families where there is abuse or some kind of form of insecurity, are going to feel stressed because of what's happening now. The stress is the feeling of threat, and this needs to be addressed. This needs to be taken care of. It's not okay to take a child who comes from a bad family where things are bad for them, where they're scared all the time, and expect them to go to school and study and have a clear head to study and wire in new knowledge, or be particularly interested. The brain is scared. So it's preoccupied with survival, and it does not have the energy or the flexibility or the neuroplasticity that it needs in order to learn. If a child is stressed, teachers and anybody who cares for them need to sit down with them and find out where in their life they experience a life-threatening situation. Whether they're actually going to die or not from the situation, it doesn't matter. What matters is the feeling that you're facing an existential threat. Now, the people in Gaza right now that Israel is killing, that Israel is trapping in Gaza, who are living in absolutely horrific conditions, are obviously all threatened, and therefore are likely to feel stress because they are actually threatened. They are under threat, and what needs to be done is not manage their threat, but stop or the stress, but stop the situation that is causing them to feel under threat. They're not imagining they're under threat, they are actually under threat. A domestic abuse victim is not imagining that she or he are under threat. They are under threat. If every time they go home to a bully that is verbally abusing them or physically abusing them or sexually abusing them, of course they're going to feel under threat. Our attitude to threat to stress needs to change. If somebody says they're stressed, we need to start paying attention. A lot of clients come to therapy with the experience of stress, and it's very, very important to find out what is it that this stress is telling them. So I've already mentioned that people with unfinished business or trauma from the past are more likely to experience stress in situations that people without trauma may not experience. The word resilience is something that I'm sure most viewers will have heard. Resilience is the ability to face some kind of a setback in life, um, but um, but recover from it fairly quickly, and ideally, in my universe, not just cope with it, but actually even grow through it. People who have pre-existing trauma and who are physically right now or psychologically in a bad situation are going to suffer from poor resilience, which means even a small thing that goes wrong can cause them to feel what we call stress. It will trigger the experience of existential threat in them. Now, I've already mentioned that what do? We need to listen to it and we need to stop that. We need to find out what it is that's causing the threat, and we need to make sure that it's dismantled, that that situation that's causing stress and threat to people is no longer there. Another thing too that people can do is, even if they do not have any kind of real threat or immediate threat in their life right now, they might want to consider that they need to integrate their brain in the same spirit that I've talked about in the first few podcasts of this series. That neural integration, or integrating the prefrontal cortex with the limbic brain through the process of validating emotions. Please look at podcasts 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, where I discuss it, including the exercise of what to do and how to integrate the brain. I also mention it in my book on which I call Therapy Without a Therapist. The When the brain is not sufficiently integrated, even if a person doesn't have severe trauma from the past, they might experience stress in the present simply because they're using the wrong brain to do a job that is not meant for. Your limbic brain is supposed to be something like a safety officer. It's supposed to tell you what's going on around you so that you can stay alive and be safe. But it's not a brain, it's not a system that's suited for managing the complex life of an adult in a very complex world. The limbic brain has no idea what to do with all the technology that we have and the complexities that we have in our modern society, with money, with all kinds of systems that we have in our lives that are. The limbic brain just doesn't know what to do with it, and it can feel stressful to it to deal with things like insurance or cars or rent or mortgages or raising children or juggling responsibilities, because the limbic brain is not a good planner. It can't plan. Planning comes from the prefrontal cortex. And so it is the ability to regulate ourselves, our emotions. Basically, if you send your limbic brain to do your job as an adult, it's not going to feel okay, and it's going to feel under threat. Imagine that you take your 15-year-old or 5-year-old or 10-year-old and you send them to do your job, whether you're a doctor or a teacher or an engineer or whatever it is that you do. how do you think a child or a teenager will feel? They will feel stressed because they're trying to do the job of an adult that they're not accustomed, they're not supposed to be able to do. They don't have the neurological capacity to do it. So basically, anybody who isn't sufficiently integrated is going to feel stressed, as in under threat, if they try to do something or engage with processes that are way beyond the capacity of the limbic brain to handle. Only when we function from here can we handle the adult responsibility and the complexity that we are facing as adults in a modern, complex technological world with ease. So I don't know if you remember the quote that I had from Dan Siegel. Let me actually find it. It's worth it. When we are sufficiently integrated, we function with ease. We are able to do what we can do, what we're qualified to do. The skill set we have, the education we have, will enable us to do it with relative ease. We'll kind of flow through life without feeling stressed, without feeling under threat. We will just face it. So if you remember, um, these are the traits of the prefrontal cortex and what it does for us. It gives us, these are 9 main ones, but there are others that I list in Therapy Without a Therapist. So the prefrontal cortex regulates our bodies, helps us attune to others, gives us emotional balance, calms fear. So because it regulates the limbic brain, which is fear-based. It helps us pause before acting. In other words, choose our actions, and we have plenty of choice and creativity as to what kind of course of action to take when we have a dilemma. It gives us insight and empathy, and it gives us the ability to think morally and act morally in the world, and also access to intuition. When we're better integrated, we experience a sensation of harmony. The state of integration allows us to function in the world that we should be able to function in because we're qualified, we're educated, we're grown up. We should be able to function in a world like that with relative ease, to kind of flow without feeling stressed. If somebody's feeling stressed, um, somebody that I know or somebody that I see as a client, where there isn't an actual life-threatening circumstance around them, and they feel stressed when I know they're perfectly qualified to do their job, I know that they're not sufficiently integrated and that they're sending their limbic brain, if you like, to do the job for them. And like I said before, you will not send your kid, your 5-year-old or 16-year-old or 12-year-old to do the job of an adult, because the moment that they try to do it, they're going to feel extremely stressed. They're going to feel under threat. If I approached doing this podcast, for example, if it was my limbic brain that was in the foreground and I wasn't sufficiently integrated, I wouldn't be able to do it. I would be too stressed. I would be too worried. I would feel like a fraud. I would feel like I am not. I'm just faking it. The imposter syndrome that I think I mentioned before. That's a classic situation where the limbic brain, it knows that we're asking it to do something it's not designed to do, it's not meant to do. It should be your safety officer. So, to summarize the main points, stress isn't having a lot to do and not enough time to do it, or having perhaps a few conflicting demands on you. Stress is the experience of threat. So the question is, if you feel stressed, you need to ask yourself, what is it about this particular situation that makes me feel threatened? Now, if you follow that line of questioning with yourself, first of all, you must validate the fact that you're feeling the way you do. Do not forget, validation is key. The first thing you tell yourself is that it's okay to feel what you feel. Absolutely vital that you do that for your process of integration. But when you start to ask, well, what is it about this situation that makes me feel under threat? Then gradually you will find out that there is something about it, and it could be from now, or it could be from the past, some unfinished business that you've totally forgotten about. It could also be something like maybe you're in the wrong job. Maybe you're not fulfilling yourself. Maybe you're wasting a lot of time doing something that doesn't mean much to you, and you feel like your life is wasting away. Nobody can live just to exist. Human beings need a purpose, and they need for their life to mean something. So to live without purpose, to live just with existence, just, well, I'm going to do my job, it's a slog, I'm just doing it to get to earn a living, that will induce stress as well, because that feels threatening. It may not feel threatening in an obvious way to our physical survival, but it will feel threatening to our whole being. There is a sense of my life is ticking away and I'm wasting it and I'm not living it. So there are many reasons why a person would feel under threat. And there is no one size fits all here. Nobody can tell another person what would make them feel stressed. But if a person feels stressed, it's likely to be because they're feeling under threat, and there's a good chance that the thing they're frightened about is something that they know, that they've already experienced. 9 times out of 10, we fear things we have already experienced or witnessed. The number of times I heard from clients, and I've experienced it myself, I don't want to end up like my father or my mother. I don't want to end up like this person or that person. That can be threatening as well. If somebody else had a negative experience and you look at it and you think, well, I don't want that, that could feel threatening. But most of the time, the feeling of threat, of fear, will be based on something we've already experienced. We tend to not fear things that we haven't experienced or we have no familiarity with at all. So, what to do with stress? Like with everything else you feel, validate it and listen to it. Stress means threat. It means that in the situation that stresses you, there is a sense of threat. And the question is, what about it is threatening? And listen to that, validate it, and do something about it. So it's not about stress management, just exercising or eating a healthy diet. I mean, all of these are obviously good things, but they're not going to solve stress in the long term. Oh, another thing too, some people, because they get to that point where they feel so stressed by a job that they should be, by the way, fully qualified to do, they opt out and they leave their the job that might actually be fulfilling for them, but it's too stressful because they're not integrated enough, and the limbic brain's trying to do it, and they opt out and they do something that's way beneath their abilities. The danger with that is that while the stress will go because the limbic brain is not feeling like it's facing something too complicated, life is also not going to be fulfilling. So a human being, so simple, people can just try to deal with the stress by simply reducing responsibilities. In a short term, in a short in the short term, it could be helpful, but as a way of life, it's a terrible shame because people have so much potential and so much ability, but without sufficient integration, if the limbic brain is in charge of their lives, they'll be too stressed and they will not be able to do whatever it is that they want to do, that they're passionate about, that means something to them. So I really hope that this discussion about stress has been helpful to you. If you if you want to um, if I just wanted to look for the email address. If you wanted to write to me and ask questions or comments, or if you want me to talk more about any topic or a part of a topic, please do write to me to this address, to podcasts at fullyhuman.co.uk. That's podcast at fullyhuman.co.uk. I really hope that this has been helpful to you, and I look forward to doing the next podcast. Thank you.